We still have a couple people joining, so I'm going to wait a minute or two here as we had approximately 60 people sign up to join us. So we'll make sure that everyone has a chance to get in before we begin.
I signed up when I got the initial email and registered, and I got a response. I'm registered. And then the next day, I got another email that said it was canceled. So I took it off. Yeah. And then yesterday, I got another email to say, not mentioning the cancellation, but said, uh, said I could register. So I registered again.
Hmm.
I don't know what happened there.
I don't either. I didn't realize anything went out about a cancellation, so I'm sorry
Yeah,
about that.
yeah, me too. Maybe that's why. I don't know. Maybe there wasn't that many people. I don't know. Oh well. But,
I usually try to give people a minute or two to get in.
oh, sure.
So, yeah.
But I mean, maybe a bunch of people signed up, and then they canceled because of the cancel notice. I'm unless I'm the only one that got that. I was feeling a little paranoid there. It's like, ooh,
Um, no, I
Okay.
got it too.
Oh, did you? Okay, then there must have been something in the system that I screwed up or something. I'm sorry.
well, it
Um,
probably wasn't you.
oh, it probably was. I have been known to have many of those kinds of issues in my life when I inadvertently didn't mean to do something. So,
Well, you're the only one. I mean, I never make any kind of mistakes,
all right.
especially with the
Okay.
computer.
I'll take all the responsibility. Uh, Goodness, people are still coming in, so that's great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start then, and I'll just let people join as they come. So, good afternoon. I'm Eileen Doherty, and I'm the director of the Colorado Gerontological Society. And this afternoon, we're going to talk a little bit about determining mental capacity. This is part of our advanced care planning series. So we're going to delve right in and we're going to look at capacity as well as competency, as well as informed consent. So those will be kind of the three things that we will address this afternoon. So capacity is basically deciding whether or not the individual is or is not capable of making a medical decision within a given situation, and that is determined by a physician, a nurse practitioner, or a physician assistant. So normally there's kind of the requirement, if you will, that there be some medical oversight or intervention. Now, there are a lot of the various kinds of forms that are out there which can help to guide people who are not medical individuals in getting some sense about capacity, but an official diagnosis has to be made by a medical professional. Capacity is basically kind of a functional assessment and a clinical then determination that the individual has specific decision-making capability to, in fact, enter into that agreement. Competency, then, on the other hand, is the ability of the individual to really participate in legal proceedings, and this is often determined by either judges or by attorneys. So let's start then about sort of figuring out what we need to be concerned about as it relates to decision-making capacity. So if somebody is when we're sort of trying to decide about capacity, one of the things that we want to pay attention to is the individual able to make a decision? Are they able to really be a part of that decision making, or do they just accept or refuse whatever care or information is provided to them? Sometimes what happens also is that the individual will refuse care, or they are inconsistent, or they will say yes, they'll do it, and then an hour later they're saying no, they're not going to do it. So again, it's that ability to really enter into an informed decision. Oftentimes, another thing that makes us concerned about decision-making capacity is the individual able to perform activities of daily living? So are they able to cook? Are they able to manage their finances? Are they able to take a bath? Are they able to, stay safe, if you will? Hyperactivity, disruptive behavior, or agitation can also be another indicator, if you will. So if the person just can't sit still, is unable to make any kind of decision sitting for any length of time, if they're disruptive, they get up in the middle of a meeting or lunch or something like that when there's no good reason for them to get up, or they're just sort of out of control. They're just agitated, constantly upset. Another thing that's happened sometimes when we're questioning decision-making capacity is what is their emotional state. So are they just very affective, not really engaging, not able to smile or show any emotion or empathy or understanding? So they're not really internalizing, if you will, emotionally what's being talked about. Hallucinations can be another concern when we're doing decision making, where people are seeing things, they're hearing things, they're unable to really test reality. Sometimes decision making is also compromised with clinical intoxication. So again, this could be drugs, it could be alcohol. Those would be the two most frequent ones, but it could also be overdosing on prescription medications. So I got that one out of order, I'm sorry. Another thing is sensory deprivation. So the person is really not conscious. They're not able to engage. Again, having a conversation. And this might be because of a blow to the head. It might be because their ability, they've lost consciousness due to a disease or due to sedation, might be another one. Cognition is the person able to be attentive, and can they concentrate on what it is that you're trying to tell them? Oftentimes, they might also experience short-term memory or be temporarily impaired, and that could be due to dementia. It could be due to delirium. It could be due to intoxication. Kind of the difference between delirium and dementia for this particular conversation is that delirium usually happens like if the individual has had like surgery or anesthesia or something like that, where at the moment or in the short term, a day or two or three, they're really not able to be involved in any kind of decision making. But prior to like having the anesthesia or going to the hospital or whatever, they were perfectly able to make decisions. So delirium presents itself as kind of a short-term transient situation, whereas dementia presents itself as something that has been going on for a long time. Had a geriatric physician one time tell me that he hated when his patients went to the hospital because they often came back with a dementia diagnosis, which he had to figure out how to undo, because his position was that if you had dementia before you went to the emergency room or the hospital, you'll have dementia when you come home. If you were perfectly able to make decisions before you went to the hospital, you've got delirium and not dementia. So he spent a lot of time cleaning up people's records, trying to help them not have that diagnosis. Insight is basically the insight is, are you able to recognize and understand what's going on with the actions that you're taking? And then are you able to exercise any kind of judgment as in terms of making those actions or decisions? So that if I ask you about those later, do you really remember what you did? And is it a good, sound decision? So we alluded to a few minutes ago that basically a physician, a nurse practitioner, or a PA is responsible for helping to determine capacity. So the things that a physician would look at is, what is the individual's understanding? Are they actually able to make sense out of the information that is being given to them? A second thing is appreciation. Are they able to really weigh the risks and benefits and assess these options within their own personal value system, within their own lifestyle? Is this something that makes sense for them? Communication. Is the person really able to communicate what the decision is and verbalize the ultimate decision? And again, it's not just parroting back what you or what the physician has shared with them, but it's actually being able, if you will, to tell the physician or another significant person in their lives what the decision is and why it was made and where we're going forth with it. And then the last one is rationalization or reasoning. Are we able to really make a logical, rational decision? Can we get to the point of we know that this is what happens, this is how we are proceeding forward, and this is why we are making that decision? So sometimes we see that people use the MMSE or the mini mental status exam, and it has a very specific purpose, but the purpose of the MMSE is to basically measure cognitive function and screen for cognitive impairment. Cognitive functioning and cognitive impairment is a little bit different than capacity. So the MMSE, which we'll look at a little bit more in the next couple slides, does not really measure executive functioning. It doesn't measure the individual's ability to plan, to do problem solving, to make decisions. And so that is, while it is a tool to give us a sense of what we might be looking at in the MMSE, it does not help us determine capacity. So let's take a look at the MMSE and see what it actually measures. So it's going to look at things like orientation. Do you know what time it is, what day it is, where you are? Are you able to repeat and remember information? So some of you may have sat through these tests in your life. This is where they'll give you 5 items or 3 items, and they ask you to remember those and then or to repeat them and then remember them later. Attention and calculation. This is, are you able to focus and perform simple calculations? So this is where they might ask you to subtract by serial sevens. So take 100 and keep subtracting 7. Recall, this is where they're going to ask you whether or not you can remember those 3 or 5 items. Language is, do you understand what is being asked of you? And then oftentimes the last exercise in this is to put the hands on a clock or some other type of geometric figure. Other types of tools that are often used to measure cognitive impairment and dementia really get much more into, if you will, these same areas, but they focus a lot more on executive functioning. Here's where they're going to ask some of the same kinds of questions, but they ask you to do a lot more problem solving, a lot more planning and sort of foresight. So the one that I often see used is this SLUMS, which stands for the St. Louis University Mental Status exam. And again, they're going to start out kind of asking you questions like, what day is it? Where are you? Those kinds of things. So a couple of these are repetitive, if you will, of the MMSE. And there are lots of different tools out there. The SLUMS is just one that I see used a lot because it has only like, I don't know, 10 or 12 questions. It's pretty easy to score. The doctor can do it relatively quickly in their office, and if they're able to kind of make a preliminary decision. But it really focuses on, it'll give you stories and it asks you to solve the story. It asks you to solve much more complex math problems and stuff like that. When you're being asked, if you will, whether or not the individual has capacity, my advice is always to try to err on the side of caution. And so, you know, make sure that you explain information in multiple different ways. Take time to really work with the individual and try to understand what it is that they are asking, what decision that you're making. You don't want somebody to be deemed incapacitated with a rushed kind of decision. Also, a lot of times what happens is that as people are trying to process information and do problem solving, we present too much information. It comes at us oftentimes with a lot of discussion and big words and what have you. And so, again, trying to just take information slowly and making sure that the individual does in fact understand it. So when you're doing a SLUMS, this is basically questions 1 through 3. As I said earlier, are really looking at attention and immediate recall and orientation. And then questions 4 through 7 on this form. So if you decide you want to download a copy, you can. I've given you that link in the previous slide. You can, you know, can you remember what we talked about earlier? So again, they'll give you a story. And then instead of asking you the objects to remember, they ask you to remember what was in the story as they query you about that. Again, they do numeric calculations, but it's much more complicated than the subtract by 7 from 100. It'll be much more, again, a problem. You have a $100 bill, you spent $7, and then this cost you 23. How much do you have left? So it's a double step processing as opposed to a single step. Again, they really do try to get you to recall things. So a question that's in this one is name as many animals as you can in a certain period of time. Registration and digit span, again, this is asking you to actually like put an X, if you will, in a triangle, or which box is the largest. So again, they're trying to kind of figure out what, if you're able to really make distinctions. Visually, again, can you separate large from small, big from little, and then extrapolate and make executive functioning decisions. So let's look a little bit at competency. So again, some of the same kinds of things enter into competency. So do you understand the information? Are you able to reason and evaluate the information that is coming at you? Can you appreciate and understand the risks, the benefits, your value system, how it fits into your lifestyle? And then can you make a choice or a decision? So that's very similar, if you will, to the capacity, but we use a little different tests, if you will. Some similar, but again, we try to use a little bit different tests to get us, if you will, to this point of competency. So again, we're going to use some type of cognitive assessments, but we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to start looking at memory issues, as well as what is our interaction patterns with other people. Can we use fine motor skills? How do we navigate with the big bad world out there? Do we get lost? Can we find our way home? Do we get lost in information? So how do we manage our environment? We're going to do some types of functional assessments. So we're not only going to be looking at activities of daily living, but now we're also going to be entering or adding into that, what is our ability to do financial management, and are we able to handle our own affairs, or is that something that we have to get support from other people? We're also going to be looking at psychological evaluations. So here we're going to look at the difference between cognitive decline, which was kind of what we were starting to look at with the MMSE, as well as with like the slums. Like I say, there's a lot of different tools out there. I just have picked this one. And then what are the mental health issues as well as emotional factors? So are we able psychologically to make decisions? What is our mood like? Are we highly anxious? Are we depressed? Are we unable to, because we've got schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder or some of those kinds of things, able to actually make decisions? We're also, as part of a competency evaluation, we need to really look at medical history. So what are the medications that we are taking? Are there any side effects of those that could be causing memory or decision-making problems? For example, if hallucinations was one of the things that we had noted as part of capacity, and trying to determine capacity. Maybe if we were taking some of the Parkinson's medications, which some of them have a side effect of hallucinations, or some of the chronically mentally ill medications, they have hallucinations as a side effect as well. So maybe that hallucinations should not be considered when we're looking at capacity. We also should look at, are there any chronic illnesses that are causing us to be concerned? Prior injuries, such as, did we have a history of concussions? Have we been in severe car accidents? Is that causing us issues? So really, we're going to be doing a much more extensive review of medical records. And then lastly, when we're dealing with mental capacity, we're going to be also just talking to the individual, interviewing them, trying to get a sense of, are they able to make decisions? In terms of determining mental capacity, it's really important when we're trying to make legal decisions. And that's why frequently when we're making legal decisions, we're looking at competency as opposed to capacity. So competency means basically, is the person able to do it? Do they have the ability to do it? Capacity, we're looking at, does the individual have the mental functioning to make those decisions? So the reason that this becomes important when we're looking at it from a legal perspective is, are the decisions we're making valid? And does the individual have informed decision-making ability? We want to protect people, especially older adults, from exploitation, but we also want to protect them from poor decision-making. So for example, we don't want them entering into say, for example, I had an aunt one time who decided quite into her impaired capacity, went and tried to buy an automobile and then tried to figure out how to enter into a loan. And eventually she called me, and to be honest with you, we took the car back because the car salesman was really focused on making a decision. It was the wrong car. She didn't have the ability to finance it, to make the payments. And it was a long, complex piece of work, but I was able to get it undone for her. But basically, she made a very poor decision, why she decided she needed a new car that day. And oftentimes she would come and get me when she would enter into these kinds of legal or financial situations. But that day she went to do it by herself. We need to have mental competency when we enter into any kind of legal proceedings. So if we are creating a power of attorney, we are identifying somebody to be our agent to take responsibility for our finances or our healthcare decisions. We need to know that that person who is giving their power has the capacity and the competency to do it. Similarly, if we're doing guardianships and conservatorships, or making a last will and testament, a trust, all of those are legal documents that have legal implications. And so we need to make sure that they are valid and will hold up in court. And so if they are made by an individual who is not competent, then they can be challenged. The legal profession also has an ethical and professional responsibility to make sure that older adults are competent to engage in legal transactions. So as I just said, mental capacity is absolutely necessary when making financial decisions. We oftentimes don't think about the financial decisions that we make, but we have rental agreements, we have mortgage insurance, we pay car insurance, we have to get our driver's license renewed. So all of those are like financial legal decisions. Oftentimes people will have an investment portfolio, and that may be a large portfolio or it may be a very small portfolio. You might only have $10,000 in the bank, but that's still an investment. And you don't want to be have it you don't want to maybe take it out. You want it there for a specific purpose. Property transactions also become important. We don't want people entering into loans or HELOCs or telling somebody they're going to sell their property or doing, and then not having a clear title. So again, that all gets very complicated sometimes. Debt management is another thing that can happen, especially if people have a lot of credit cards and they use those credit cards to buy things that they would normally not have purchased because they've always been a very conservative individual. And now they've got $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 worth of credit card debt because, of course, the credit card companies are constantly sending out offers, and instead of shredding them or making a decision about, do I really need a credit card? And if I get one, how will I pay it off? That again can be a problem for mental competency. It's important to know that many times in my long career of doing these kinds of supports for people, I have been able to undo things simply because I was able to prove that the person was not competent or that they were being exploited. Guardianships or estate planning, this is really important. Again, we want to make sure that your last will and testament or a trust cannot be challenged. We want to make sure that whoever we designate as the beneficiary is the person who's going to carry out your decisions, and that our wishes are, if you will, represented, and that the person will carry them out as we want. The guardianships and conservatorships, again, we want, if we're taking away somebody's rights to make decisions, we want to make sure that the individual truly is no longer able to make those decisions. And then powers of attorney, as I said a few minutes ago, we want to make sure that the person knows what they have done and that they're aware of those implications. Sometimes if we have questions about whether or not the individual is competent, an attorney might ask for a letter of competency. And again, this is a statement from a physician that basically confirms, if you will, based on capacity, that the individual does in fact have the ability to enter into these legal decisions. So while the courts and attorneys are the ones who are responsible for making, determining competency, mental capacity, or the lack thereof, it helps to inform those decisions so that the legal documents that are created are actually valid and will hold up at some future point in a court of law. A letter of competency can also help to demonstrate that the person was, if you will, they had clarity, that they were in their right mind, that they intended to do this, and that they recognize what decision they have made. So if in fact you either decide for yourself or you're asked to get a letter of competency for someone that you're working with, these are some of the items that are suggested that they be in there. So one is obviously the individual's name and date of birth, what the extent of the patient-physician relationship is, a statement confirming the individual's ability to make informed decisions regarding their healthcare, finances, and legal matters, any relevant medical diagnoses or dates of diagnoses, and then how, if the court or the attorney or any other interested party was wanting to get in touch with that physician, their information as well. If you do get a letter of competency, store it with your other legal documents. Store it with your last will and testament. Store it with your trust. Make it part of your powers of attorney if that becomes important. Again, if you're just regularly using your power of attorney because you need to put your name on the bank statement or whatever, you probably don't need the letter of competency, but you may need it in other legal kinds of situations, such as maybe a really big surgery or something like that. You could also include the test results. So if somebody did like a SLUMS or whatever kind of capacity testing that they did, include that, and then keep a copy in the patient's medical record as well, so that if the physician is ever asked about it, they have a copy there as well. So now let's turn for a few moments to informed consent. This is a process where individuals are provided with the necessary information about a medical treatment, a research study, or other procedure, and it allows them to make a voluntary and informed decision about whether or not they want to participate. It's not only used for medical decisions, but that's one use of it. It's a fundamental principle in healthcare, and basically it allows the individual to make their own decisions, and for whoever is providing the care or the services, that they are transparent about what they're doing, that they actually go through the process so you can make decisions. Informed consent means that you yourself understand the risk, the benefits, the alternatives, and the consequences of these medical interventions, financial decisions, or legal actions that allow you to weigh your options and participate in these treatment plans, in making any kind of financial decisions, or engaging in legal proceedings. So again, informed consent means that I have to feel comfortable that you are making a decision that really, in effect, is in your best interest and that you know what you're doing. There's always a statement out here that people are allowed to make bad decisions. And if bad decisions don't impact other people or other people's lifestyles or impinge upon their safety, we can let you make a bad decision, but informed consent really has to take priority and precedence. There are, again, and some of this feels like it's going over the same things, but there are 5 elements, if you will, that are often used in informed consent. One is disclosure of the information. So making sure whether it's a medical procedure, whether it's signing a power of attorney, whether it's entering into a new loan or opening a bank account, basically it's understanding that information, knowing what it is that you're doing and making sure that you can tell someone what it is you are doing. Competency, again, meaning do you understand? Do you understand the risks? Can you tell me what it is you are doing? That you are entering into this voluntarily. Sometimes we have seen in our agency involuntary decision making where people are not making decisions by themselves, but they're being influenced by a caregiver, they're being influenced by a child who is wanting to take over their decision-making processes so that it's done voluntarily. Informed consent also means that the individual needs to understand the alternatives and the risks of doing this. So if I go through with opening up a new bank account, what are the risks? Does that mean I have to switch my Social Security? Do I have to get new check blanks? Do I have to get new credit cards? Whatever. And then it has to have some level of understanding of what is in fact being discussed and described. It's crucial because if the individual understands informed consent, then it really sort of empowers the individual to make good decisions. If the person is not able to give informed consent, then they're not going to be able to make good decisions. And that's when things like powers of attorney, guardianships, conservatorships enter into the decision-making process, and someone else has to step in and make those decisions. So when you give informed consent, you are basically saying to an attorney or to a physician or to a judge that it's okay to go ahead and make those give you those treatments, do those tests, create the legal documents, or enter into those financial arrangements. Your signature on a document says that you understand those risks, benefits, and other options. So the person, you've had it explained to you, you can respond in a reasonable way, what has the information or the decision that has been made. And now you are basically taking the next step, which is that you are saying specifically with your signature, I want to proceed. Now, if you sign the paperwork and you decide that you do not want to go forward with it, there is the option to change it or to back out. Things like a loan, like my aunt got on her car, the way I was able to get out of that was it was within the 72-hour rescission period. So there are some, even in the law, built-in safeguards that says even if you gave informed consent or you thought you gave consent or you agreed to do something, that you can always back out of it. If you create a will you can always revoke it. If you create a power of attorney, you can always revoke it. If you decide that you don't want the cancer treatments, you can stop them. So again, a lot of times you can change your mind. It's a little hard to change your mind if you agree to surgery and you change your mind after the surgery. So in a situation like that, it's important to make sure that that you wanted the surgery and you understand it. But you can go all the way up to the moment of getting anesthesia and say, I want to change my mind. So the important thing with informed consent is that you know what you're doing and you have the ability then to sign and say, yes, I want it. And you retain the power or the authority to change your mind even after you have given consent. So with that, it kind of brings us to the end of our presentation today. Just quickly, a little bit about a couple of our programs. So we did get our dental grant renewed. So as of July 1st, we now have money again to provide dental services if you do not have Medicaid or other insurance. And we do provide a pretty full range of those services. They're available in the Metro Denver area and on basically anything west of I-25 except Colorado Springs and Pueblo. We also continue to provide all of our other services. So if you are interested in taking advantage of those, we also are planning our Salute the Seniors on August the 23rd. It will be at the Greek Event Center in person from 9:30 to 3 and virtually on August the 24th. So if you want to join us, you can do that. We are currently working on a big project to work with health insurance brokers to be able to help people take advantage of the senior housing income tax credits. And the event information has been posted but there's still a couple of tweaks that need to be done on our website. So there will be about 15 in-person events throughout the state where you can go to a community location like a library and get help filling out your forms on the date that the event is scheduled. Or many of these insurance brokers are also going to be offering the ability to go to their house to their office and schedule an appointment and get help and support. So encourage you to do that. One of the things we want to make you aware of is that if you do take advantage of a health insurance broker's services, they will ask you if you want to sign up for a health insurance checkup, and you are under no obligation to have a health insurance checkup, and it should not make any difference in terms of your getting help with your senior housing income tax filing of the forms. We'll also be doing Medicare Monday in the fall, and more information will be available about that at a later point in time. And so with that, I will close this afternoon's presentation and take questions. Okay, so somebody put in the
Funding.
chat. Yes.
At one point, there was a place on the slide that said download, click to download. It was early on, and you said you provided that our ability to do that. I tried clicking on it and nothing happened.
You have to get the slides from me, and then you'll have to download it when you get from the slide.
Oh, and
when
we
you
get
the
those.
slides. Yeah.
We get those by going on to the.
I'll send them to you. I probably will send them out today, and then I'll send the recording later.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
It takes a while for this recording to do, and then I don't always get them out. So I found that if I try to send the slides right after the presentation, then you've got them. And you can always go to the YouTube channel, and the presentation is uploaded then to the YouTube channel. And to get to the YouTube channel, just put in YouTube Colorado Gerontological Society, and then you'll be able to see what's there.
Thank you.
Okay, so somebody raised their hand. Did you?
Hi, Eileen. Yes, that was me. I'm Robin. Thank you so much for this presentation. I appreciate it. My question was, would this recording be available to people today? I'd love to be able to share it with a whole lot of people. So thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so in the chat, there's another comment. It looks like I'm going to read it here. It says, cultural values and beliefs may also impact psychological reasoning, interpretation, and communication skills. Definitely. And some of the forms that are used to make those determinations actually try to take into account. I have seen those modified, if you will, for certain biases that the form may skew to one way or the other. So definitely that needs to be taken into consideration. And if you read that in the literature, you'll see that we are doing better, if you will, at paying attention to that. So I am actually pleased with that. Somebody also said there's a study that anesthesia and sedation increase the risk for dementia years later. Okay, well, that's probably fair. I don't know that I've read that, but I would be interested in following that, especially since I know there's a lot of people who end up with multiple surgeries over a lifetime and have anesthesia, more frequently than others. So that would be, I would say, definitely something we should follow closely in our work. The next question says, does the state of Colorado recognize a written codicil to the will? And the answer is yes. The next question is, what do you know about sedation increasing the risk for dementia? Well, I just told you, not much, but doesn't mean that it's not out there and that we shouldn't be paying attention to it. The next one says, please elaborate a bit more on the senior property tax exemption. Okay. So the senior property tax exemption is in the state constitution. Individuals must be age 65 and over and live in their own home for 10 years or more. You must be entitled to the property. And you apply through the county assessor's office for a reduction of 50% of the taxes owed on the first $200,000 of value. So if you have a $500,000 house, basically you will get a reduction of 50% on the first 200,000 and then pay full for the last 300,000. If you have a $500,000 house, your tax credit is approximately, I've seen between 500 and 800, sometimes depending on inflation and sales prices and those kinds of things. I've seen it as high as $1,100 or $1,200, but it's usually closer between 500 and 800. Been around a long time. The forms are available on our website under Do I Qualify? And then there's a section on taxes, tax help, and you can click there and it'll take you to the form and then file it with the county assessor. And then if you file before July 1 of 2025, you should get the tax credit on your 25 taxes that are due in 26. There are some restrictions if you don't get it filed by July 1, but just ignore those and file them anyway, because basically you lose your appeal rights, and file anyway, just because more likely you'll be better off giving up your appeal rights than you will losing the tax credit for a year. So go ahead and file. If you don't get it filed by July 1 of 25, you can file by July 1 of 2026, and you don't get the deduction then until 2027 when you pay your 26 taxes. Does that help? Okay. And then, oh, Patty says, thank you. Well, Patty, thank you for your kind thoughts. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, with that then, we will continue this series on advanced care planning, and it will be, we'll have another session the second Thursday of August, I guess, because we're in July. And then there'll be an aging in place session the fourth Thursday of July. So watch your email for further sessions. Thank you all and have a great day.